Hey guys, tonight, we're not going to kings. We're not going to castles. We're not even going to people whose names history bothered to remember. Tonight, we're going to a medieval peasant. So go ahead and get comfortable. Dim the lights. Put your phone down face first so it can't judge you. Because this is the story of a person who woke up every morning knowing, with absolute certainty, that the law itself was not on their side. This is not a tale of adventure. It's not a rise and fall narrative. It's not even particularly dramatic. It's just life. Long, repetitive, slightly damp, and legally disappointing. Our peasant doesn't wake up to an alarm clock. There is no gentle chime. There is no sunrise yoga. They wake up because their body hurts. And because something in the house smells like smoke, mildew, or last night's dinner, sometimes all three. The house is small. One room, maybe two if the family is doing well or if someone built an extra wall during a year when nobody noticed. The floor is dirt, not metaphorically, actual dirt, packed down by generations of feet that never went anywhere interesting. Animals live inside with the family. This is not because peasants loved animals. It's because animals were expensive, winters were cold, and nobody wanted to lose a cow to frostbite when it could just sleep next to the children. If you're wondering about privacy, there is none. If you're wondering about silence, also no. If you're wondering about personal dreams, absolutely not. The peasant gets up before the sun because the sun does not care about your feelings, and neither does the Lord. Breakfast is something, usually bread, dark, dense, aggressively brown bread that tastes like effort and regret. Maybe there's ale, not because they're partying, but because the water is unsafe and fermentation is doing the best it can. This ale is weak. It won't make you drunk. It will just make existence slightly blurrier around the edges, which is honestly a public service. By the time the sun rises, the peasant is already working. And here's the important thing to understand. This work does not belong to them. Most medieval peasants are serfs, which is a polite way of saying, legally attached to land they do not own. They cannot leave. They cannot sell the land. They cannot decide one day that they've had enough and would like to try being happy somewhere else. The land belongs to the Lord. So does the forest. So does the mill. So does the oven. So does the river. So does, in a very real sense, their future. The peasant works the Lord's fields first. Always first. Their own crops come second, assuming there's time and nobody needs an extra favor performed under the vague threat of punishment. Farming is not pastoral. It is not calm. It is not that painting you've seen where everyone looks oddly clean. It is backbreaking labor with tools that barely cooperate. Plows get stuck. Soil fights back. Weather changes its mind constantly. If the harvest fails, the peasant starves. If the harvest succeeds, the Lord collects his share. If the peasant complains, the law reminds them who owns the complaint. And the church is there too. Watching. Waiting. Tithes must be paid. God is very invested in your grain output. By midday, the peasant is tired in a way that doesn't go away with rest. This is the kind of tired that lives in the bones. Lunch is small. Maybe more bread. Maybe onions. Meat is rare. Vegetables are seasonal. Hunger is constant, just quietly humming in the background like an old appliance. In theory, the peasant is protected. The Lord is supposed to provide security, justice, stability. In practice, this depends heavily on whether the Lord is competent, sober, or feeling merciful that year. If a dispute happens, over land, over livestock, over accusations, the peasant does not go to court in any modern sense. They go to the Lord's court, which is run by the Lord, who benefits from the Lord winning. Justice is efficient like that. Afternoon work continues. Fields, repairs, fetching water, collecting firewood, carefully, because cutting wood without permission is illegal. Even trees have better legal standing than peasants. If a peasant is injured, they work anyway. If they're sick, they work slower. If they die, the system continues uninterrupted. By evening, the peasant returns home. Dinner is whatever survived the day. Children help. Elderly family members sit quietly, conserving energy. There is no retirement. There is no pension. You work until you can't, and then you hope someone feeds you out of obligation or habit. Entertainment is limited. Stories, songs, occasional festivals approved by both church and Lord. Fun must be scheduled and supervised. And then night comes. The peasant goes to sleep early because candles cost money and exhaustion is free. They lie down knowing tomorrow will be exactly the same. Not worse. Not better. Just the same. This is not a life of ambition. It is a life of survival. A life where the goal is not happiness, but continuity. And the most important rule of all. Do not stand out. Do not complain loudly. Do not attract attention. Because medieval society does not reward individuality. It rewards compliance. And our peasant, whether they like it or not, is very, very good at surviving inside the lines. Part 1. A day in the life of a medieval peasant who is legally not having a good time. Hey guys. Tonight, we're starting somewhere small. Low to the ground. Very muddy. So get comfortable. Dim the lights. Let your thoughts slow down. Because this is the story of a medieval peasant. A person whose entire legal existence could be summarized as asterisk. No, actually. Asterisk. Our peasant wakes up before the sun, not because they're disciplined, but because their body refuses to sleep on a dirt floor for more than a few hours at a time. The house is one room, maybe two if someone got ambitious with a plank. The floor is earth. The walls are timber, packed with mud, straw, and optimism. Animals are inside, not pets. Investments. A cow breathing directly onto your ankles is not comforting, but it is warm. Breakfast is bread. It is always bread. Dense, dark, and baked from grain that still vaguely remembers being dirt. There might be ale. Not for fun. Because drinking the water is a game medieval people did not survive long enough to enjoy. The day's work begins immediately, because time does not belong to the peasant. It belongs to the Lord. Most peasants are serfs, which means they are legally tied to the land. Not metaphorically, literally. They cannot leave without permission. They cannot sell what they farm. They cannot decide one day to start fresh somewhere with fewer feudal obligations and more joy. The land is owned by the Lord. The forest is owned by the Lord. The mill is owned by the Lord. Even the oven is owned by the Lord, which means baking your own bread sometimes requires paying rent to use fire. The peasant works the Lord's fields first. Always first. Their own crops come second, assuming there's daylight left and nobody higher up the food chain suddenly needs a favor. Farming is not gentle. It is repetitive, punishing labor done with tools that look suspiciously like suggestions rather than solutions. The soil fights back. The weather changes its mind constantly. And if the harvest fails, the peasant starves. If it succeeds, the Lord collects his share anyway. Around midday, there is a pause that could generously be called lunch. More bread, maybe onions. Meat appears rarely enough to be remembered. Hunger is not dramatic. It's quiet. It just stays. The church is always present. Watching. Counting. A tenth of what you produce belongs to God, who has outsourced collection to people with ledgers and opinions. Disputes do not go to neutral courts. They go to the Lord's court. Run by the Lord. For the Lord. Justice here is efficient, not fair. Afternoon brings more work. Repairing tools. Hauling water. Collecting firewood. Carefully, because cutting wood without permission is illegal. Even trees have better paperwork than peasants. If someone gets sick, they work slower. If they're injured, they work anyway. There is no sick leave. There is only endurance. By evening, the peasant returns home exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. Dinner is whatever remains. Children help. The elderly sit quietly, conserving energy. There is no retirement. You work until you can't, and then you hope someone remembers you exist. Entertainment is simple. Stories, songs, occasional festivals approved by both church and Lord. Fun must be supervised. Night falls. Candles are expensive, so darkness arrives early. The peasant lies down knowing tomorrow will look exactly like today. Not worse. Not better. Just the same. The greatest rule of medieval peasant life is simple. Do not stand out. Do not complain loudly. Do not attract attention. Medieval society does not reward individuality. It rewards survival. Part 3. A day in the life of a medieval peasant who was legally not having a good time. Hey guys, let's quietly drift back into the village. Nothing dramatic happened overnight, which, for a medieval peasant, already counts as a good start. Morning arrives the same way it always does. With cold, stiffness, and the immediate awareness that your body is older than you feel and younger than it should be. The peasant wakes up sore. Not injured, just permanently uncomfortable. This is the baseline setting. There's bread again. There's always bread. Sometimes it's fresher. Sometimes it's harder than yesterday and aggressively committed to staying that way. Today is not just any day. Today is obligation day. One of those days where the Lord, the church, or the universe in general has decided you owe something extra. It might be labor. It might be a fee. It might be both. The medieval peasant lives inside a calendar made entirely of demands. Some days belong to your crops. Some days belong to the Lord's fields. Some days belong to the church. Some days belong to taxes that are not technically called taxes but feel exactly like them. And none of these days belong to you. Mid-morning, the peasant heads out with everyone else. This is communal labor time. Men, women, children, everyone who can stand contributes. Not because they want to, but because absence is noticed. The village works together, but not romantically. This is not unity. This is shared obligation. Someone is always watching. The Lord's steward. The reeve. That one neighbor who reports things a little too eagerly. Rules are enforced quietly. Miss a day, and fines appear. Fall behind, and obligations stack. Argue, and suddenly your life becomes administratively complicated. Around noon, there's a brief pause. Food is eaten standing or sitting on the ground. No one relaxes fully. Rest is always conditional. The peasant hears news. News travels slowly and arrives already distorted. A war somewhere far away. A new tax. A bad harvest in the next village. None of it is actionable. It's just something to worry about later. Afternoon work stretches on. The sun moves. The body adapts. Pain becomes background noise. This is when fear quietly settles in. Not panic, just awareness. What if the crops fail? What if someone gets sick? What if the Lord changes his mind? The peasant has no savings. No safety net. No legal cushion. One bad season can erase a family. Evening finally arrives. Work stops because visibility does, not because effort is complete. People drift back home. Tonight, the peasant attends a small gathering. Not a party, a shared meal, a quiet moment of human connection that costs nothing but time. Stories are told, jokes are made, someone laughs a little too loudly and then remembers where they are. Children fall asleep quickly, adults sit longer, talking softly. This is the closest thing to freedom they get. A moment not directly supervised. Before sleep, the peasant thinks about tomorrow. Not dreams, plans. What needs fixing? What must be paid? What cannot go wrong? Because medieval peasant life is not about hope. It's about continuity. Survive this season. Make it to the next. Most of them do. Part 4. A day in the life of a medieval peasant who was legally not having a good time. Hey guys, let's ease back in. Same village, same mud, same laws that absolutely do not care how tired you are. By now, the peasant doesn't wake up thinking about the day. They wake up thinking about what could go wrong. Because that's the real skill medieval life teaches. Anticipation of disaster. The morning routine repeats itself with mechanical precision. Bread, a sip of ale, a brief glance at the sky, because weather is the closest thing to fate that still feels negotiable. Today is a court day. That doesn't mean drama. It means paperwork, fines, and public reminders of where you stand. The village gathers. Not eagerly. Courts in medieval life are not places of justice. They are places of correction. The Lord's representative sits somewhere slightly elevated. This is important. Height matters. Cases are heard. Someone let their pig wander into the wrong field. Someone missed a Labor Day because their child was sick. Someone cut wood they technically weren't allowed to cut. None of this is shocking. It's routine. Fines are issued. Always payable. Always inconvenient. Arguing is possible, but discouraged by tone, posture, and consequences. The peasant watches carefully, learning, not the law, but how the law feels today. Because medieval law is flexible. Not in your favor, but in mood. After court, work resumes immediately. Justice does not come with a day off. Fields need tending, tools need fixing, animals need feeding, injuries happen quietly. A cut, a strained muscle, something twisted wrong. The peasant notes it and keeps going. Stopping is not an option unless something is visibly broken, and even then, expectations remain. By afternoon, fatigue settles in deeper than usual. Court days drain something extra. They remind you that your survival is conditional. There's a quiet anger that medieval peasants learn not to express. Not because they lack it, but because expressing it costs more than suppressing it. Evening brings a small mercy. No additional demands. No unexpected summons. Dinner is modest, predictable, comforting in its sameness. The peasant sits with family. There is warmth here. Not joy exactly, but stability. Stories are told again. Old ones. Familiar ones.